I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now and listen to me closely, because what I'm about to tell you is something I have never said out loud. Not to my children, not to my closest friends, not even to myself for a long, long time. And if even one of you can avoid the pain I carried for years because of this mistake, then every word I'm about to speak will have been worth it. I was 63 years old. I had worked my entire life, 40 years of early mornings, double shifts, clipped coupons, and skipped vacations. I had a retirement account I was proud of. Not enormous, but mine. Every dollar in it was a piece of my life that I had chosen to save instead of spend. And in the space of about 8 months, most of it was gone. Gone because of someone I trusted completely. Gone because I believed kindness in history meant safety. Gone because I never imagined that a person who had sat at my dinner table, who had celebrated birthdays with my grandchildren, who had cried at my husband's funeral, could ever look me in the eye and take everything I had. If you're new here, my name is Margaret. I'm 71 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio, and I talk about the things nobody wants to admit. The regrets, the mistakes, the quiet devastation that hides behind a kept-up house, and a polite smile. I don't talk about this to get your sympathy. I talk about it so you won't be me. And before we go any further, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and tap that notification bell. There are hundreds of us here sharing stories that the financial world doesn't want you to hear. You belong in this community. Now, let's go back to where this all started. His name was Donald. And if you had asked me in the summer of 2015 whether I trusted Donald with my life, I would have said yes without blinking. We had known each other for over 20 years. He had been my late husband Gerald's closest friend. They'd met at church in the early 90s, fished together every fall, shared a love of old country music and bad coffee. After Gerald passed in 2013, Donald became something of a steady presence. He'd call to check in. He'd bring firewood in December without being asked. He helped me navigate the worst grief of my life, and I was grateful in a way that I now realize left me vulnerable. Because gratitude, when it grows deep enough, can make you stop asking questions. Donald had started a financial advisory business sometime around 2011. He wasn't licensed through any major firm. He operated what he called a private investment management service, which should have been a red flag, though I didn't know enough at the time to recognize it. He had clients. He had a nice office over on Merchant Street with framed certificates on the wall and a mahogany desk that smelled like money. He spoke with quiet confidence about returns and portfolio diversification and the kind of future security I was desperate to believe in. I was a retired school administrator. I understood budgets. I understood planning. But the specific language of investing, the mechanics of it, that was foreign to me. And I think Donald knew that. I think he had always known that about me, long before he ever brought it up. He approached me in early 2015. It was casual. We were having lunch at the diner on Route 9, and he mentioned gently that some of his other clients, older women, recently widowed, in situations very similar to mine, had been seeing strong returns on their retirement savings through his firm. He said he'd been hesitant to bring it up because he didn't want to mix friendship with business, but that he'd feel guilty not mentioning it. He used that word, guilty. I have thought about that word 1,000 times since. He used it like a weapon he'd wrapped in velvet. I told him I'd think about it, and I did think about it. I talked myself into it and out of it for about 3 weeks. I looked at my retirement statements, at the modest returns, at the projections my bank had given me, and I did the math that so many people my age are terrified to do. The math that tells you that what you have saved may not be enough, that the years ahead might be longer than your money. Fear is a powerful motivator. And Donald, whether he knew it consciously or not, had planted that fear and then offered himself as the solution. I transferred my first amount to his firm in April of 2015. It was $42,000, a significant sum to me, but not everything. I told myself I was being cautious, testing the waters. Donald sent me a handwritten note thanking me for trusting him. He said he would treat my money like his own mother's. The first quarterly statement looked wonderful, more than I'd ever earned through my bank. I remember sitting at the kitchen table reading it, and for the first time since Gerald died, I felt something close to hopeful about the future. That hope was the most dangerous thing I ever felt. Over the next several months, I moved more money. Not all at once. Donald never pushed, which I later came to understand was part of the design. A good manipulator doesn't rush you. They let you rush yourself. By the end of 2015, I had transferred just over $160,000. That was the vast majority of my retirement savings. The money Gerald and I had spent 4 decades building together. The statements kept coming. They kept looking beautiful. I showed them to my daughter Claire once, and she seemed uneasy, asked me some questions I brushed off. I told her Donald was like family. She didn't push. I wish she had pushed harder. I wish I had let her. The first sign that something was wrong came in the spring of 2016. I needed to take a small distribution, just under $8,000, to cover some unexpected repairs on the house. The roof had started leaking, and the estimates weren't kind. I called Donald and asked him to process a withdrawal. He was warm, as always, reassuring, said it would take a couple of weeks to liquidate the right portion without disturbing the portfolio's performance. 2 weeks passed, then 3. I called again. He apologized, said there'd been some administrative delays, some paperwork on his end. He'd overnight the check. The check didn't come. I called again. He answered and sounded for the first time slightly rushed. Said he was dealing with a situation with another client, but I was his priority. I'd have the money within the week. By the time 6 weeks had passed, I knew in my stomach what I refused to know in my mind. There is a particular kind of sick feeling that settles in when the truth is too terrible to accept. It sits at the base of your throat like a stone. I had that feeling every morning when I woke up, and I swallowed it every day, because the alternative, that I had handed my life savings to someone who had betrayed me, felt too shattering to hold. I finally called an attorney, a woman named Sandra, who worked out of an office 2 towns over. I brought my statements, my transfer records, every piece of paper Donald had ever given me. She looked through them quietly for a long time. Then she looked at me, and her face said everything before her words did. The statements were fabricated. Every one of them. The returns that had made me feel so safe, so smart, so hopeful. They were numbers Donald had invented on a letterhead he'd designed to look official. My money had not been invested. My money had been used, some of it, investigators later determined, to pay off earlier clients in what is one of the oldest financial frauds in existence. The rest had gone toward Donald's personal expenses, a boat, a renovation on his home in Florida, a lifestyle he couldn't actually afford. He was running a Ponzi scheme, and I was one of his longest-standing, most trusting, most profitable victims. I sat in Sandra's office, and I didn't cry. I think I was too stunned to cry. I just kept looking at my hands in my lap and thinking about Gerald, about all those years of packed lunches and used cars, and saying no to things we wanted because we were building something together. I thought about how I had taken what he left behind and placed it in the hands of someone who smiled at his funeral. That thought, more than anything else, is the one that broke me. Authorities were eventually contacted. Donald was investigated. There were other victims, 11 of us in total, mostly widows, mostly women in our 60s and 70s, who had known him through church or community circles. The investigation took over a year. Donald cooperated to a point. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced, but by then, the money was largely gone. What the courts were able to recover amounted to less than 12 cents on the dollar for most of us. I received back just under $19,000 from the original $162 I had given him. $19,000. That is what 40 years of careful, disciplined, hopeful saving came back to me as. I am telling you that number because I want it to be real. I don't want it to be a statistic. I want you to feel the weight of it the way I felt it. Sitting at my kitchen table, trying to figure out what the rest of my life would look like. I am not here to make you afraid of everyone. I am not here to tell you the world is cruel or that trust is a foolish thing. I don't believe either of those things. But I am here to tell you that trust, the blind, grateful, deeply personal kind of trust that can grow between two people over 20 years, is one of the most dangerous places to keep your financial future. And I want to give you the things I wish someone had given me before I walked into that diner on Route 9. The first thing I want you to understand is this. The people most likely to defraud you in retirement are not strangers. They are not faceless scammers calling from overseas. They are the people already inside your life. They know your fears because they've heard you voice them over dinner. They know your financial situation because you told them in moments of vulnerability. They know exactly how to present themselves as the answer to an anxiety you've already confessed to having. Study after study on elder financial fraud confirms this. The majority of victims knew their abuser personally. The majority trusted them before a single dollar changed hands. The second thing I want to tell you is about the warning signs I ignored. Donald was not licensed with any nationally recognized regulatory body. You can check any financial advisor's credentials in just a few minutes through the SEC's Investment Advisor search tool or through FINRA's Broker Check. Both are free and publicly available online. I did not check. I assumed that friendship was a better guarantee than a license. It is not. Licenses can be revoked, yes, but the absence of one should stop you cold before you hand over a single dollar. Third, and I cannot say this firmly enough, you must never make a major financial decision alone, no matter how much you trust the person presenting it. I had a daughter who was uneasy. I had a brother-in-law who had worked in banking for 30 years. I consulted neither of them before I transferred my savings. I was proud and private and a little embarrassed to admit I needed help evaluating something financial. That embarrassment cost me everything. Please, before you move any significant sum of money, talk to someone who has no stake in the outcome. A trusted family member, an independent CPA, a fee-only financial planner who is paid by you and not by commission. Get a second opinion. Get a third. Your retirement savings are not a decision to make in the warmth of an old friendship. Fourth, statements are not proof. This is the lesson that haunts me most. I held those quarterly statements in my hands and I believed them completely because they looked like every other financial document I'd ever received. But paper is easy to forge. Numbers are easy to invent. A legitimate financial advisor will have your accounts held at a third-party custodian, a Charles Schwab, a Fidelity, a Vanguard. You should receive statements directly from that custodian, not only from your advisor. If you cannot independently verify your account balance through a custodian that has no relationship with your advisor, that is a serious, serious problem. And fifth, please listen to your body. I knew something was wrong long before I admitted it. That feeling in my stomach in those weeks when the withdrawal didn't come, that was not anxiety. That was intelligence. That was the part of me that had lived long enough to recognize a pattern that didn't add up, even if I couldn't name it precisely. We talk ourselves out of that instinct because we don't want to be rude, or because we don't want to be wrong, or because the truth is too painful to accept. But that instinct exists for a reason. Honor it. Investigate before you dismiss it. I am 71 years old now. I live differently than I imagined I would. I work part-time at the library 2 days a week, and honestly, I love it. So there is grace in that. My children have helped me in ways that humbled me and healed me. I sold the house Gerald and I lived in for 30 years and moved somewhere smaller, somewhere I can actually afford to maintain on my own. My life is smaller in some ways, but I have learned that small doesn't mean diminished. It can mean clear, it can mean honest, it can mean exactly enough. What I lost was real. The grief of it is also real, and it did not leave quickly. There were months where I was angry in a way I had never been angry in my life. At Donald, yes, but also at myself. For believing what I wanted to believe. For confusing history with safety. For letting gratitude cloud my judgment. If you are going through something similar right now, if you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, or if you're only now starting to suspect something is wrong, please know that the shame you feel is not yours to carry. These people are skilled. They specifically seek out good, trusting people. Being a good person is not a character flaw. Being targeted by someone who exploited that goodness is not your failure. The failure belongs entirely to them. But here is what I also know. Understanding what happened to you is the beginning of protecting what you still have. And if you're watching this and nothing has gone wrong yet, if you're still in the years where there is time, then please treat this story like the warning it is. Check credentials, get second opinions, keep your accounts verifiable, trust your instincts, include the people who love you in the decisions that will shape the rest of your life. Gerald used to say that money is just stored time. Every dollar you've saved is an hour of your life you chose not to spend. Protect it with the same fierceness you would protect the hours themselves. You work too hard, for too long, to hand that time to someone who doesn't deserve it. If this story reached you today, I believe it reached you for a reason. Maybe it's confirmation of something you already suspected. Maybe it's a push toward a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's just a reminder to check in on the people in your life who are navigating their later years alone without someone watching over them. Whatever brought you here, I'm grateful you stayed until the end. If you found any value in this conversation, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone you care about. There's a community here of people just like us, people who've made mistakes, learned hard lessons, and come back to share what they know. You are not alone in this, and you never have to be. I'll see you in the next one.